Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this presentation, Permission to Thrive. I am Larry Walker. I'm the Executive Director and Co-founder of Thrive Support Services. And I'm so just honored and over the moon to be joined by none other than...
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Driffin. I am a co-founder of Thrive Support Services as well as the creator of D3 Consulting LLC.
Yes, D3. And let us know where you're checking into this presentation from. I know that we're virtual this year, so you're probably in your living room or at your place of business. Let us know where your pronouns are and where you're joining us from.
So within the hour that we are spending together, we, of course, will be talking about stigma today. Specifically, throughout the conversation, we will think about how stigma manifests in the lives of Black same-gender loving men living with HIV. Because again, when we think about stigma, it touches all aspects of So I had the live stream over so I can see your chat, okay? Just FYI. But stigma touches all parts of the HIV care continuum, and it's really, really important to keep that in mind. We will also discuss how stigma impacts care trajectory for the same population. And finally, we will wrap up the conversation with some strategies to build self-love and HIV acceptance.
Yes. But before we begin, we find that it's important to give you a little context as to who we are. We introduce our names and that we're associated with this organization, Thrive Support Services. But a little bit about Thrive. Thrive has the largest network of Black gay men living with HIV in the country. It's grown in the grassroots, it's at somebody's dinner table, child, like most good, good efforts for Black people, but it's visceral to us. And in this portion, I would like to share a bit about the ethos of 2015 when we actually started Thrive. So in 2015, 3 years after the innovation of PrEP, a pill that would stop the acquisition of HIV for people not living with HIV, a decade after the discovery of protease inhibitors that would allow for us, people living with HIV, to live longer, healthier lives, a year after the conclusion of the partner study that gave way to the understanding that people living with HIV who were durably virally suppressed could not pass HIV to their negative partners, giving way to U equals U. Black gay men living with the HIV in Atlanta were still dying at alarming rates. Around the same time that the CDC projected that 1 in 2 Black gay men will contract HIV in his lifetime, Black gay men in Atlanta were living on the streets and being browbeaten by their providers as to how they had to take this pill that often required food to be taken with the medication. In 2015, 8 years after I myself will be diagnosed as a person living with HIV, 8 years undetectable, Black gay men and trans women in Atlanta were still dying and being put into situations where they were having to choose how they wanted to die. That's the reason why we created Thrive Support Services, not because we wanted to, not because we even had the courage to share with one another that we were people living with HIV, but because we had to. Because in 2015, 3 decades after discovering a virus that was killing gay men, Black gay men are still having issues accessing our basic necessities, disenfranchised from our basic unalienable things that we should all have as citizens. We wanted to start an organization to save our own lives because the person who would first say that would die himself of AIDS. We wanted to do something holistic that celebrated all of us. And I wish that I could say that sitting here now in 2021, 7 years after creating what will become both of our life's work, that things were much better. But there are still Black people who don't know the concepts that we loosely throw around on a daily. They aren't familiar with trauma-informed approaches. They aren't familiar with the impact that trauma has on our daily lives, on the impacts that racism and oppression and these other stigmas play in who and how we are. There are those who expect highly marginalized and abused communities of people to pull ourselves up by bootstraps that we aren't aware that it even exists. In order to go from surviving to thriving, we have to honor and address the atrocities that befall us on a daily basis. That's why we created Transforming HIV Resentments into Victory Everlasting Support Services, which is what Thrive stands for. And I wish that we could say that 40 years after discovering the epidemic that would turn communities on their head, that we were more prepared to deal with pandemics and epidemics, and that there was equity, equal footing at addressing and navigating dangerous spaces, but we don't. That's why Thrive exists. That's why the Southern AIDS Coalition exists. That's why Black AIDS Institute exists, and doing this amazing work. And that's why we'll probably exist into perpetuity, because it seems that the work to undo these atrocities, these wrongs that have been done, is never done. We center self-love and HIV acceptance, and we center community because no one else will. It would be great if Black people just got to do what makes us happy, and we didn't have to respond and fight and push back so hard against everything. But we don't. We don't just get the vacation and let our hair down. We don't even get to sit in the parking lot of a Wendy's without having to deal with microaggressions and micro assaults from other people from outside of our communities. We have to show up. We have to square up. We have to strengthen up and square up against the myriad of mounting, intersecting atrocities that befall us on a daily basis. And we do this not because we want to, not because it's the most comfortable, intuitive thing to do. We do it because we know that when we fight, we win. If you believe that when we fight and push back against these stigmas, we win, when we fight, we win into the chat box. Daniel?
I don't know why I thought I could do this without no tissue or no Kleenex near me, but you're gonna see a tear soon, but I'm just gonna wipe it off and throw it this way. So the overview of stigma. And again, we know stigma is a social construct that involves at least two fundamental components. You see the definition here, and I see Jacqueline is chatting in, when we fight, we win. Thank you, sister. You see the definition here, the recognition of a difference based on some distinguishable characteristic that ultimately devalues as a consequence. So again, the two things that are really important when we think about stigma is a difference and a devaluation of worth. Think about stigma from your eyes. Chat in how would you define stigma in the chat as well? Next slide.
Yes, so in this portion, we're gonna share some of our and we invite you to share some moments where you felt stigma. It doesn't have to be related to a health condition or anything like that. I know that we're coming from the center of HIV or from the centers of being Black, same gender loving men, but stigma is so vast, and it shows up in a myriad of aspects of our lives. But in this portion, we're gonna both share our most stigmatizing stories. And I'm gonna start, and of course, as progressed as I am, my most stigmatizing moment involves a boy. So I was getting to know this beautiful artist who was, if you know anything about me, I'm like an arts nerd, like an arts groupie, like art, give me more. And I met this amazing person who, was into me as an artist, into me as a person, and was just like, we shared so many commonalities. I struggled with whether I should tell him that I was living with HIV, but I challenged myself that I would, because of the anxiety that not telling people and not disclosing would induce inside of my body. So before we were ever intimate, on our second date, I tell him, and this man is like, he gives me the whole, it's not a death sentence, you're great, you're still all of these things. I'm like, oh my God, I can feel it coming. Like, if you're a person living with HIV, when that denouement is coming. It's like, okay, here we go. Now, we winding down. So he says to me, I wish you would have waited to tell me, because then I would be best prepared to deal with this. And I promise, never, me and Daniel talk, and when we talk at Thrive a lot, and I've never cried about being a person at HIV, being a person living with HIV. I've never, I felt stigmatized, I felt shame because of it, but I've never oh my God, boo-hoo. But this moment was one that I was severely in my feelings about this, because I was doing the right thing, I was doing what I felt like I should do, by giving him a choice, and he chose to swerve me. And that's the most stigmatizing moment. That's one of the most viscerally stigmatizing moments that I've experienced as it relates to being a person with HIV.
Ooh, friend. I I think for me, my most stigmatizing moment, of course, would not be with a boy, and it was truly with a dentist. And this was years ago. This was a younger Daniel prior to knowing the power, that each of us have inside of ourselves as people living with HIV. But I remember my dentist in rural South Carolina telling me, "Oh, you either have to be the first person to get services in the morning or the last person to get services in the morning." And it was as a result of we had to clean the instruments more after you leave. And I was like, "What?" And again, like this is me in 2008. Probably less than 6 months living with HIV, and I think then that was like a such like a visceral moment that it really like pushed me away from dental care for a good handful of years, you
Mhm.
know. And again, I think the story reminds me of the little things that anyone, let alone a medical provider, a loved one, someone that you want to date, could say just in passing, and it leaves an imprint within us, again, of that shame, of that devaluation, and the negative impacts that comes with it for the many years later. So
Yeah.
I see we have Rita in the chat, and I'm going to read her comment real quick. It
Yeah.
says, I face stigma dealing with a chronic invisible illness and being judged by a medical community. The ignorant remarks have broken me many times, and it led me not to seek help many times when I should have. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm
I
sorry
think,
that happened to
go
you.
ahead.
No, I was just like, I hate that these things are happening to us, and I think that y'all are making a great example, a great point as to how like having these occurrences really challenges your ability to take care of yourself. You know what I mean? To prioritize your health. And it's just horrible that these things are happening. And this is what Daniel will call a disservice provider. And we'll get to that in in a moment. Did we have any others that you wanted to hold up, Daniel?
I don't see any right now.
Okay,
So let's
perfect.
go on. So these are the four types of stigmas that we really will dive into deeper. They're bulleted here on this slide, but over the next two slides, we will discuss a definition of internalized stigma, which is really to self, anticipated stigma, you thinking about it, enacted stigma, which is, really thinking about as a result of something, and structural stigma. So that is your policies, procedures, structures that enforce stigma. Next slide, Larry.
Yes, let's go deeper into the definitions that we have here of anticipated stigma. So, to the extent that in which a person believes that they are likely to be devalued or distance themselves from a person, or from community. It's like that anticipation, like as a Black queer man from Baltimore, when I go home to Baltimore and I'm walking through certain neighborhoods, I'm like, well, maybe I should go the long way around this neighborhood because I feel like these people may approach me or I might be met with some type of contrast that I don't feel like dealing with. Now that internalized stigma is that stigma that we internalize, like Daniel was saying. It's like, my experiences or the vicarious experiences that I experienced from other people. Daniel had this experience at the dentist. So now I don't feel comfortable going to the dentist because I feel like people living with HIV are often, transgressed against at the dentist. So it's that stigma that we internalize in our bodies, and that's actually we should have flipped this because I feel like that internalized stigma is what fuels that anticipated stigma. Because if you've ever been stigmatized, if you've ever been oppressed, which many of us have been, you don't want to go through that again. You start to feel like, okay, let me start to forecast these stigmatizing situations so that I never have to find myself in a situation where I'm being challenged like that again.
I think the fact that you said flipping internalized and anticipated is crucial. I think even as we dive into enacted stigma, I think it is as a result of knowing and being stigmatized from some moment, and from there on out, it's always, oh, they're treating me this way because of, you
Mhm.
know. So here enacted stigma is again that perceived act of discrimination as a result of, that can be visiting family members who may not be comfortable with you living with HIV, and they have like an extra stringent process of cleaning. It's them taking out the bleach and pouring it in the water in front of you. You're like, girl, wait a minute, sis. It's serving you on paper plates or paper products. It's those types of things.
Mhm.
Next up is structural stigma. And again, when you think of structure, think of policies, procedures, and the different societal level conditions, norms, and policies that constrains you as a result of the stigmatizing aspect. In red here, we have HIV criminalization. So like HIV criminalization is like the pinnacle of structural stigma. Again, as a result of you living with HIV, it's illegal. If you don't disclose your status, it's illegal. If you do disclose your status in some situations, it's illegal. Like truly to be yourself. Another example of structural stigma that I like to have a conversation about is, let's say you have a smaller organization in the area and they only take care of people living with HIV on a Tuesday or a Thursday. So, like, instantly, as a result of you living with HIV, you going to this place on Tuesday or Thursday, the policies have now disclosed your status. Those are the different examples of structural stigma we like to highlight.
Yes.
Next slide.
So we want to do an activity, and we're going to do it with you all. We didn't determine if we could do breakout, so we're going to just do it live. And this is called the stigma tree. Like, it's a big, huge tree because that's what stigma is, and that's how it operates. If we were in the space together, if we got to see all 55 faces, then we would, divide ourselves into a group, and we would each conduct these 3 brainstorms, right? We would talk about the identity. We would talk about the identity of stigma, right? So like at the roots, what's at the roots, Daniel? That's the causes of stigma. So like the root causes of why this stigmatizing occurrence or these thoughts and frameworks exist. Then the trunk are the forms of stigma. So how like they manifest: race, sexism, the isms basically. And then the branches are the effects. So we just heard, having these stigmatizing events happen in the care spaces have challenged our abilities or our desire to go re-enter into these care spaces. When we have our statuses or our race or whatever used against us in a situation where we're looking and seeking love, then we feel diminished and we may feel challenged as it relates to approaching love. So we're going to go through this activity. I know that Daniel is the expert on the stigma tree. So I'm gonna let you give us the instruction, or we can do this out loud. I really want to invite us to do this together in the chat box because we all have examples. And again, we're here talking about HIV stigma, but like stigma, if a stigma only related to HIV, we would squash that thing like a bug. We would get rid of her in a day. It's far more expansive, Daniel.
Absolutely. So again, thinking about those roots, the roots are the deep, deep, deep things. So here on this slide is lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, fear, or stereotyping. When we think about the trunk of the tree, so that is form. So that's how does it come out? It can come out physical violence, emotional violence, segregation. So like once someone discloses their HIV status, they very well can be placed in violence. From between intimate partners, they could be violated or experience violence from community, and such. And finally, the effects, or again, the branches of the tree. And that is feeling isolated, that is being sad, depressed, fear. Okay. So in the chat, okay, and I see a couple of people already chatting, and feel free to chat in, just different aspects of stigma from the roots, forms, or the effects of stigma that you have experienced or any of your clientele have experienced. And again, next year when we come back to see you guys, because like we have to come to the Mecca always. We will definitely be in person, and this will be a remarkable presentation. Oh, I see Muhammad says roots are often toxic, perpetual, and toxic social norms.
Yeah.
Yep. Our
So
friend Kelvin is chatted in the causes, fear, multiple forms of oppression that use stigma as a Trojan horse. Exactly. Exactly. I think stigma can take its form in so many ways.
right,
So many ways.
right. Keep chatting in. Keep chatting in.
I see mental health stigma. Yeah. Hmm.
So this is how stigma, some ways, and these are not expansive lists, and we want to invite you to expound on these lists inside of the chat box with us. We want this to be as interactive as possible. But some ways that stigma manifests for Black same gender loving men, right? Microaggressions, those slick, sly little remarks that people make about us, like on a slide that like you might get 2 blocks away and be like, what did that person just say to me? Like, somebody had me messed up about 2 blocks ago. Then we have micro assaults, those things that like are like, you cannot get past the fact that no, you were coming for me directly, live and full effect. Like your stigma made me feel some type of way. And micro assault, anti-Blackness is one of those things. But then anti-Blackness can also come show its forms in microaggressions too, right? More nuance. And then unconscious and conscious bias. So, dealing with unconscious, again, it's similar to microaggressions and micro assaults. I would think that some microaggressions are more so like, this person is just kind of like, passively passing off their little hate versus like conscious bias. Like, I don't like people with blonde tips, so Daniel gonna get these feelings all day, you know. Then when we get into provider bias, this is when we start talking about the disservice providers. Those biases that act as barriers for people who are trying to get care, the care that they deserve, that we require to live. And that provider bias is one that we're going to drill down on here because there's no space in that in care provision, for that in care provision. And then there's community perception, right? So it took me 9 years, Daniel, under 9 years and a couple hours and days to really come out as a person living with HIV, because I felt like I would be met with and marred with the stigma from my community. Oh, he's a person who should have knew better. He went here, he did that. Ain't that the same person? That type of perception that because of my condition, because of my diagnoses, that I somehow did something wrong, I'm less than. I've heard people say, well, people with college degrees don't really get HIV. What? Like, that don't even make sense. Like, it's like, huh? Like that don't make logical sense. It's these things, these perceptions that keep people in our communities from getting tested. And this is what facilitated the 2015s. And I mean, shit, we've lost members as recent as 2020 because they dealt with some of this list. And again, I invite you to add to this list because it's not the total sum. Daniel?
You mentioned the 9 years, and the same. It was the same conversation for me. It was 7 years. Again, as a person with a science background, as a person, providing HIV testing, still feeling that I would be judged. I would be looked at negatively as a result of living with HIV. So again, it even, even if it impacts us in this version, in this way, how could we not fathom, that it could impact someone or multiple people, without a positive support structure or just positive people, in their realm. So yeah, we always have to keep that in mind. So here you see the impacts of stigma. And again, leading from the conversation of provider bias, these first 3 bullets are some of the things that are measurable. Like we can actually see the impact of poor adherence. You know, we can actually see the impact of missed appointments. You know, it's more likely, you know, when people living with HIV, especially Black gay men living with HIV, miss their doctor appointment, they will be detectable. You know, they will go without medication. You know, and and since we are still in, you know, a modality where medication is provided daily, you know, more than 99% of the time, not having your medication on hand is really problematic. Towards the bottom of the list, again, I think that begins to get us into the mental and the behavioral aspects. You know, it's again that devaluation. It's being depressed. It's feeling anxious. Is being isolated, and you know it could bring on negative coping mechanisms like substance use. It could bring on, you know, just anxiety that is unnecessary, especially is unnecessary when we think about people living with HIV. You know, stress impacts every body system. You know, so again, we really had to think about additional ways to de-stress, to put positive support structures to keep everyone the healthiest, the longest. So I see Jasper chatted something in. So it says racism in the gay community, homophobia in the Black community, causing MSM of color fearing or avoiding HIV testing so that they aren't known or labeled as MSM. Exactly. You know, like this conversation can go. We're having this conversation from the standpoint of living with HIV, but again, like if we flip the coin and have the conversation from preventing HIV, it's the same conversation. Tell us about these community examples, Larry.
Yes, so these community examples are near and dear and visceral to our hearts. Daniel, you can probably turn your camera off if you're more comfortable. You know, you used to cry. I know that you better turn that camera back on. So these are examples of what happens or what could happen when, you know, people don't receive the care that they need, that when we are met with multiple layers of stigma on the screen. And, you know, I shade to this person, rest in peace to this person if you know them in the chat. Antron Oluka Ayude, one of my inspirations then when I first met them in 2013, and, you know, a member of Thrive, a member of an organization that I worked for, to support young people, and they felt like they never fit because they were different. You know, they were femme identified, they were, you know, Black, they were poor, you know, they were loud, and because of the myriad of stigma and the intersecting stigmas that Antron faced, he felt like he didn't fit into community. He had poor adherence, like Daniel just said, like we just spoke of, poor adherence, you know, as isolation from community, you know, when they were in need of like shelter and medication and support, they just felt like they didn't fit. And because Antoine is somebody that I really loved and valued, you know, I took their transition, which they transitioned in 2017, very deeply, because I felt like I should have been able to save them. This was another one of those moments. You know, we talked at length. I actually wrote a poem that I want to share because I'm a poet. So if you don't know already, I am. But it was about Antron, and it was maybe a year. I wrote it a year before he actually transitioned. It goes, "I am my brother. His shame is mine. His pride is mine. The whips that create a tree of scars on his back are mine. I am his sissified talk. The switch in his walk. The popped lips. Those popped lips are mine. I am his broken limp wrist that he twists as he reads. I am the garment he weaves to be worn by the master. The garment that he weaves to weave together a masterwork to be worn by the oppressor. I am the sigh he took when he got the news about his bad blood. I am the road he took alone as he was tossed from his home. I am my brother. The resilience he exhibits, the last fuck he gave before lying comfortably in his truth. I am my sissified, pride-filled brother, and he is I, and we are good together." The next example is another member of Thrive, Anthony. Anthony was a member of the house ball community. He was a member of Atlanta's community, very well known in both Virginia, Atlanta, for his talents as a house mother. Anthony felt judged because due to his experiences, multiple experiences of trauma, he engaged substance use, and he felt judged because he was a person living with HIV. Anthony literally called me 2 days before he transitioned to reach out to just figure out why he was experiencing this, why he felt like he couldn't connect, why he felt like he was the person that's being disenfranchised from community because of his experiences. And it broke my heart when I could not give him an answer as to why his community wasn't safer, why the community, even the community that we built, wasn't safer, why we couldn't protect him. And I've added them to this presentation because I still don't get it. I still don't know why. You know, in such a beautiful, resilient community, in such a great, amazing time filled with potential, there are still people who are not safe. There are still people who are not invited to the space as fully who they are. And these are the unfortunate consequences of that. You know, so if you're hearing my voice right now and you know people living with HIV or people who use drugs or just people who are struggling right now and feel disenfranchised from community, love extra on them today and all days. Because as I often say, there is no pill to rebuild will. These brothers suffer from an extreme atrophying of their will. There's no pill to rebuild that. We are that pill.
Yeah. Oh.
Take your time, bro.
I Oh, I remember. One of our youngest brothers, Gregory,
Mm-hmm.
and him transitioning, with HIV at the age of 23, and I think the other day a reminder came up, um, and it was his sister. It was like 2 states away, and the screenshot was like, I don't want I don't want my brother to die, and whew, and it's still going on, you know. I think last year we had more than 900 people die in Georgia, with HIV. You know, I mean, if we did, just basic math, that's more than two folks every day, you know, and it truly is continuum. Um, so here we have organizations, right? And this is the beginning of just thinking about additional ways that the structures that we work in maybe continuing stigmatizing experiences into the community, right? So here, for 2 blocks prior to this building, 2 blocks after this building, any of those bus stops, any of those, transit stops, instantly that, oh, girl, they got AIDS. It's always the worst thing. It's always the worst thing. Girl, they got AIDS. They go into the Burger King with AIDS. They go into the place with AIDS. Just as a result of, the community perception of who have always gone to the building, who's the building designed for and whatnot. So thinking about how do we begin to break those ties, how can we truly begin to create a safer, enriching environment for the people that we are truly keeping healthy.
Yeah.
Ooh, next one, friend.
Yeah. Related to this, I will never forget that one of the young people at the place that myself and Dwayne, the Evolution Project that we ran, said that they were on the bus and the bus driver told another rider, "Oh, that's the AIDS clinic." And I like just thinking like, what would you get off?
Why would you get off the bus?
And how? Like, I mean, we often talk about like what we traverse through to get to because a lot of times on the ASO, the AIDS service organization or the community-based organization side, it's like, just get to us. Just get to us. But baby, from my house to you, I am met with so many challenges, and if the lady on the bus driver gonna say that this is the AIDS clinic, baby, I might just stay on and go to the mall.
And I can imagine the bus driver leaning over to the microphone. Next stop, AIDS clinic.
Yeah.
Like, come on, sis. Oh. So here you have disservice providers. And I mean, take the time and check out each of these. And, for us, disservice providers show up in so many ways. Okay. Disservice providers can be folks taking care of people living with HIV. It can also be the people who are charged to, keep people negative. So in the first example, we have a image from the Bird Box film. If you didn't see Bird Box a few years ago, basically people traversing the community being blindfolded. Okay, that's it. So you have the statement above it. It says ASO. So bring us all the Black gay men in the city to our CAB. Of course, CABs are community advisory boards. And us, a young Black gay man in that position, a Black gay man, or even one of our trans brothers or sisters in that position, we ask back, can we use incentives to get folks here? Can we give a piece of food while we're here? And the response is silence. It's no response. That's a disservice being provided. Next up, we have Larry commenting through Facebook. It says, I remember having to be given emergency meds 3 months in a row because my case manager kept forgetting to fax in my documents in my application. Like, how do you forget to do your job at work? Hashtag disservice providers. And very similar, with me, I've had that same experience so many times. I think with me, it was connected to my health insurance continuation program, or HICP. And that is, the Ryan White program paying for private health insurance for me. But again, the case manager that I was connected with would batch applications, rather than sending applications daily, they would get to the end of the week and batch 4 or 5 applications. And as a result, I would miss deadlines with my private health insurance, and my insurance would lapse, So imagine waking up, getting on the transit line, going to your provider that's 30 minutes away from you, and getting there like, oh, you can't be seen. And you're like, why? Well, it's a lapse in care, so they won't cover the visit. Think about all of the things that our patients, our clients have already done to like truly stay connected to care and to encounter, those types of roadblocks. Again, it makes someone not stay connected. It makes folks not want to be healthy. So again, just continue to think about ways in which we can do away with disservice providers. If you have the time, check out Facebook, check out Twitter, look up hashtag disservice providers to see additional conversations that have happened as a result of, these types of situations. Next slide, Corinne.
Yes, I will never forget that. I'm like, you did what? Am I supposed to make the medication? I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Thank you for holding that up. And I apologize in advance. I don't know if somebody, like the people are blowing leaves in the back and it's loud. So if you can hear it, I apologize in advance. But these are some strategies to combat stigma. So up first, you have Thrive SS's Undetectables networks. The Undetectables networks are driven and born of people living with HIV. Like this idea originated from us and is by us. We have several people living with HIV networks that are geared to policy, health and fitness. We have networks that are localized to specific cities and regions. We have thousands of members nationally. We do weekly interactions, shows, open mics and things like that. And we really focus heavily on meaningful involvement of people living with HIV. And it's highly adaptive, right? With minimal bounds. Like you can do it anywhere. You can do it, with women in, Alaska. It's just really about bringing people of like experience together and focusing on self-love, focusing on those resiliency points, and building and focusing on like celebration of your culture and building that community esteem. Daniel?
Next up, we have Bros in Convo. Bros in Convo is led by an amazing, amazing person, our brother, our friend. Their name is Daniel Downer. So Bros in Convo is a Black queer-led community organization promoting and providing equity to Black, bisexual, same-gender loving, queer, and other men. Bros in Convo is located in Central Florida. They provide HIV, STI treatment, and other services. One of the most important things that they also provide is truly technical assistance around assisting organizations through like anti-Black processes. So really, going deep, doing the work just to ensure that your programs are not, anti-Black, ensuring that your program is not, stigmatizing folks if they cannot, do not have to. Next slide, Larry.
Next up, we have the Counter Narrative Project. This organization is a project that is near and dear to my heart. I love the people who run it. Charles Stevens is like one of my oldest friends. And the Counter Narrative Project is a beautiful project that focuses on the beauty and resiliency of Black gay men and telling our stories in a myriad of different ways, like not just focusing on, the trauma stories, but focusing on the love stories, those points of resiliency, focusing on our history and making sure that we're countering that narrative as, Black same gender loving men just being like victims of HIV, risk agents and things of that nature. It's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. They do an annual summit. They have Revolutionary Health, which is amazing. The Reckoning magazine, which is amazing as well. And just so many things. Look up Counter Narrative and support their amazing work.
So all of the examples that we're showing, let me say this, all of the examples that we're showing, love is running through them. Okay, let me say it again. Love is running through them, And this is another example of that love that Black folks have inside of us that, ooh. Ooh.
Trying to make me shout, I'm a Buddhist now, but Buddhists still shout, child. Don't you do it to me this day. Don't you do it to me on this day.
Ooh, that was a good one. Ooh, okay. No anomaly.
Not good, but don't do it. Don't do it.
Ooh, this is led by again an amazing human. A good friend named Ian Haddock. Ian is based out of Houston, but the Normal Anomaly Initiative centers Black queer plus persons to overcome barriers in stigma and problematic narratives to actualize a new normal. So again, like coming from the standpoint that like Black and brown people can thrive, like just imagine, if we don't have stigma to deal with, imagine if we don't have transgressions to deal with, like we really can thrive and we really can like do some good shit, right? Oh, I cursed. Outside of HIV testing, employment assistance, community burial fund, they're just doing amazing people with brothers and trans sisters and brothers. And they have a community activity called the Outcry. Again, Google the Normal Anomaly Initiative and check them out.
The nice of work. Nice of work. Child, now this organization right here is the truth, okay? They're trans and gender nonconforming people. They're out of Alabama. And when I say they give back to their communities, they're not just limiting that to the queer, trans communities, but the whole Black community. I remember meeting the executive director, Quentin, at a conference and being just taken by his passion and their approach. They are not, like, again, like their food pantry not only is providing food and assistance and funding for safety for trans people, but they're also getting Pampers and formula and food for the local mothers and families in the area. So it's kind of like, I love this approach because I feel like they're loving their communities into a greater space. They're loving their communities into a greater expansion and awareness, because it's kind of hard to hate on a person that just gave you some Pampers, you know what I mean? It's kind of hard to, say, well, I don't agree with your pronouns and your right to personhood when I just gave you a whole bag of food and made sure that you got to eat. Because what it understands is that, and what we're learning every day is that Black problems are Black problems, that our community, Black and brown problems are Black and brown problems, and that HIV isn't going to be solved in a silo. It's a whole community approach. And when I say that, I feel like the NICE and Orchid understand that community approach, they really do. And look into their organization, look into their efforts, support their efforts to protect Black trans women and to build the Black community and Black and brown communities to a brave, safe space.
And we didn't say this, but please, these are just like truly a snapshot of the many conversations in local communities. If you have additional examples, chat them in. We would love to include them next time around when we do a presentation like this. Because again, like it has to be. We know it's groups, it's networks that, may not even have a name yet, may not have a 501c3 number, may not, have funding, but like they are saving their community. So like check those examples in as well.
Check them in right now so that we can create a database of those people that we need to support. These are the these are the people that are doing amazing work. And we want to support them. We want to embolden them. We want to empower them to continue to do this work, because our problem, again, is they're not going to be solved in the vacuum, and these siloed approaches aren't working. Daniel, did you want to?
I mean, before we read the slide, it's 10 till. We got 10 minutes. Real quick. Like we started and we don't talk. We don't talk about this, but we started with $50,
right,
at Fresh to Order. Like having a salad, with someone who saw something in us.
Right.
Okay, like that $50 that day have gone to touch more than countless people. Yeah. We were able to take our I Thrive photo campaign to Durban, and photo voice that experience, again, as a result of someone seeing something. So if you see things in your community, like bring it up. Okay, recommendations to wrap up. The first thing that's up here is conducting a routine, systematic stigma assessment. That stigma assessment, begins to look at, again, like policies and procedures. Like what are the case managers doing? What is the custodian doing? What are the people on the front line doing to stigmatize or even, just harm the people who come into our agency? Larry, take the next one.
Yes, so invest in additional people-centered strategies. Well, earlier when I said, that we do a disservice in the 2015 piece, when we approach communities with these, we throw around these concepts like trauma-informed care, anti-racism, housing first and things like that, without really giving context to them in our communities. So not only engaging those strategies within our organizations, but making sure that the people that we're working on the behalf of know these strategies. If I walked in a West End and said, bro, what you feel about this harm reduction approach that we're taking towards, substance use? It's like, well, what is that? We want to get the buy-in of we win when we get the buy-in of our communities, and we get the buy-in of our communities by educating and uplifting and expanding their awareness. So, damn.
And final, meaningful involvement of people living with HIV. And again, if we do not say this enough, like I just can't imagine. We had to include persons living with HIV in all of program delivery, okay? From development, from implementation to evaluation and adaptation. If you can say, oh, we have one person here living with HIV, friend, that's nothing to clap. Like, no, friend, like, we had to, someone said, say it louder, include more people. Pay them like living wages, okay? And finally, create metrics for people living with HIV, serving as staff, board members, and so on. Again, like, there's models out here. We have examples out here. You are not creating it from the ground up. Myself, Larry, and anyone doing this work, if you are looking for help, there's help out there.
Yes. Ashe, again, metrics look like this many people living with HIV must be on our board. This many people, if you're doing Black work, these many Black people need to be on the board. These are the policies that need to be in place that make assure that we're not just tokenizing people. Like Daniel said, I know we got somebody living with HIV. Twice a week, he bring the coffee. No, that's not enough, sis. Like, we're not clapping for that. We're clapping at that. How about that? So we're going to open it up for questions as the person begins to blow leaves in my yard. So I might go off camera. So do you see any questions, any responses, any like aha moments, anything that you would like to add? We would be remiss if we didn't cover. Let us know, family.
Please, please, please.
Yes.
Oh, we just had some good claps, good snaps, ashes with the tears. Because again, we don't have those types of moments, for the people throughout the community.
Yeah.
I'm on both platforms. Nothing is coming. Snap, snap, snap. So I think we did a good job for it.
Oh, y'all saw that? Oh my gosh. I had to tell him he was about to get real loud. Yes. Okay. If you need to reach out to us, if you want to have continued conversation about this, if you know people living with HIV who are feeling highly marginalized or separated, segregated from community, let us know. My email is literally my first name @thrivess.org.
Hit the button, friend. Hit the button.
Hit the button?
Hit the next slide button. It's on the left side.
Right there. Oh. No, we hide in public. That's us. We fight like Marsha P. Johnson and Zazu shirts on. Like, we do this. Like, this is our work, life's work, We're here to create those solutions. We were once those people, yeah. No. Wait. We were once those people who are highly marginalized and disenfranchised from community, separated from community. We are not comfortable with seeing Black and brown, trans, and queer people still dying or still living these squalor lives where we feel like we're the only one. We're not the only ones, So engage Bros and Combos for that anti-racism rubric, as well as survey. Look into TKO, look into the all these agencies, because we are doing this work on behalf of our fam and on behalf of each other. We're trying to save our own lives, friend.
Our contact is there. Our tech is saying, sorry, we must end now. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Please contact us. We hide in public. We love you. See you all later. Thank you again.
All right. Bye, y'all.